I just want people to know that things can change in your life in the blink of an eye. I was a suburban mom, did everything that moms do with little girls.
Can you share the events that transpired next?
The gentleman came to our room, put a silencer on the table, and said he was there to kill us. I'm going to die. My children are not going to have their mother. I'm never going to see them again.
Tell us about how you ended up receiving a life in prison sentence.
It felt like I was in a movie. It wasn't real.
In those 35 years, did you ever at any point give up hope?
Lila, I know this sounds crazy. It sounded crazy to a lot of people.
Wrongfully convicted of a crime she did not commit, Judy Henderson faced the death penalty and life in prison. It wasn't until 35 years in prison that she finally won the freedom that she deserved, and her sentence was overturned. Today, I sit down with Judy Henderson, who is the author of the new book, When the Light Finds Us. She tells us the incredible story of her childhood, of her adulthood, of how she ended up being wrongfully convicted, and how she not only survived prison, but how she overcame mothering her 2 young children. She entered prison when she was 32 years old, had 2 young children, mothering her children from behind bars and advocating for the rights of those wrongfully convicted. Judy also shares about her relationship with God and how the power of faith and hope brought her through the darkest times. I hope you enjoy this episode. Also, don't forget to join rosereport.supercast.com for ad-free episodes, behind-the-scenes access, and other special exclusive content. Many of you have not yet hit that subscribe button. We've noticed that there's over 80% sometimes of listeners who check out this channel, listen to episodes, but aren't yet subscribed. So make sure that you hit that subscribe button. Judy Henderson, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you, Lila.
It's an honor to have you here. Thank you so much for coming in. I finished your book, When the Light Finds Us. Beautiful cover here. And tearjerker.
I know. I'm sorry.
Also incredibly inspiring how you persevered after over 35 years wrongfully imprisoned as a mother. I mean, I'm a young mother, and you went into prison at 32, and just reading this book and imagining what you went through, you shared, of course, in this book, it was mind blowing. So thank you for the courage and even writing it and sharing it. And just thank you for coming on the show. It's such an honor to have you.
Oh, it's great to be here. I've been so looking forward to this and the mission that you've done all your life at a young age and all the work that you've done to help so many. I am honored to be in your presence.
Feeling is 100% mutual. So thank you, Judy. Well, I'd love to first, just for our audience listening, tell us a little bit about yourself and why you wrote When the Light Finds Us.
Like you said, I have been incarcerated for over 35 years, and I was wrongly convicted of a crime I did not commit. I was able to persevere. I was able to be resilient. I was able to be courageous. I was able to be brave only through the grace of God. And it didn't, my life has been up and down through the years with so many different things going on, from my early childhood. However, God was always present, and it wasn't us that deserted him. Him deserting us. We deserted him, and not thinking that he could see us through the hard times. And this was, an eye-opener for a lot of my family members, for me, and hopefully for a lot of people that grab this book and read it, to let them know that there is hope, that there is always, he is forever present in our lives. And there's things that he can do for you that you can't even imagine. Doors open and doors close, but he always brings the people in your life that need to be there at the right time.
There are a lot of events that led up to your wrongful conviction.
Correct.
And it started in childhood, really, for you. Can you take us back to childhood and tell us a little bit about it?
Sure. I'm the oldest of 8 children, so I was the one that had to do a lot of things to help my mother raise them. There was 3 of us born, and then she waited 5 years to have 5 more. So there was little tots running around everywhere, but my mother was such a great woman. She was my mentor. She was my friend. She helped me to know how to be a good mother and how to be resilient. She was also a battered woman. It was like a a generational curse that some families go through. And the enemy, as we know, comes in to kill, steal, and destroy. But she stood on her faith, and even through her battering years, she would still go to church and take us kids. And my mother would speak to the minister about it, and he'd just tell her to pray about it, because back in those days, people didn't get involved in family matters. It was something that was done behind closed doors. Today, of course, it's very well known about the battered women syndrome, and we're able to help correct some of those curses that were placed on these families. Through high school, I wasn't allowed to date. It was a very strict religion that I was in. And so I didn't get to be the teenager that other girls get to be. I never started dating until I met my husband, that soon became my husband. I was 18 and was on my first date. And then I ended up, we got married, and we had 2 children, Chip and Angel, and 9 years apart. But I was very close to my children. I was a suburban mom, did everything that moms do with little girls, with dance and ballet and gymnastics and sleepovers and slumber parties and all the neat stuff that a mom does with her kids. And then after 12 years of an abusive marriage, I ended up divorcing my ex-husband. And what led to me getting incarcerated was a very short span. And I will take you through that short timeline because I just want people to know that things can change in your life in the blink of an eye. It doesn't take a long time for your life to just switch over to something that you never thought it could be. And that's what happened in my life.
I am very picky about the skincare products that I use. And I'm also picky about the companies that I want to buy from. That's why I love NimiSkincare.com. Nimi Skincare has the holy grail of sunscreen, in my opinion, which is their SPF day brightening protection. I use this product every morning and I absolutely love it. And I think you will too. Nimi Skincare only uses the most effective and clean ingredients for all their skincare products. What I also love about Nimi Skincare is that this is a pro-life, pro-family, pro-freedom company that aligns with our values. One bundle that I love at Nimi is the Clean Transformation Trio. This simple 3-step system features a gentle cleanser, a hydrating toner, and a nourishing moisturizer, which are all formulated with high-impact, science-backed, clean ingredients. The Clean Transformation Trio is paraben-free, cruelty-free, and made in the USA, giving you radiant and healthy skin quickly and effectively so you can feel good inside and out. Nimi is what I love to use, and that's why I'm so excited to share Nimi with all of you. You can go to NimiSkincare.com. That's Nimi Skincare.com. Use the code Lila at checkout for 15% off your order. I want to ask you, going back briefly to your childhood, and you talked about your mother, and she was a central figure in your book, somebody that just brought you so much consolation and inspiration for how to be a mother, like you said, and she was so strong. You shared about how you were one of 8. You experienced in the home an abusive father, tragically. You mentioned your mother experienced battered woman syndrome. Did those experiences, you mentioned you married your husband at 18, you had 2 children with him. Can you speak to the experience of having experienced abuse as a child and how that impacted you when you were selecting a husband and getting married at 18?
Yes, of course. Like I said, whenever I was in high school, I wasn't a typical teenager that got to do a lot of the things that other teenage girls did. And my senior year, I was sexually molested by our assistant pastor, which had a major impact on my life. It was my senior year, and I did not graduate. It was close to the end of the school year, and I couldn't emotionally finish. And so I was sent down to live with my aunt, and that kind of had a major impact on my religion and my relationship with God. I wanted to blame him, for this happening to me. And I think I held that for a long time. And until I matured in my faith and understood it better, that it wasn't him. It was the enemy working through somebody that was a man of the cloth. I ended up, like I said, marrying my ex-husband, and he was the first man I ever dated. So he was an abuser, which I did not know at the time. I just thought that was normal because my mother lived through it for so many years, and like 28 years. So I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to get out of it. I didn't know where to turn for help because it was just learned behavior. It was natural. But then whenever the abuse I thought was going to turn toward my children, my daughter, I knew there was something I had to do. You know, it gave me the courage to protect my children, to get out of that marriage. And so I did divorce him in June of that year. I think that was 81. He still would not leave me alone. He would still come back to the house and tear up my clothes or rip up my shoes and cut them up where I couldn't go to work. And so I attempted suicide in September. And this is the timeline that I want to let the audience know how quickly your life can just spin out of control without you even watching the signs, watching the red flags, watching, because God, I believe, gives us a path. And there's signs that he gives us along the way that we don't pay attention to because our life gets too crazy, too busy. And, you know, it's like going on a trip. You watch road signs to get where you want to go. But in our lives, people are so busy out here, they don't pay attention to those signs. Even to this day, they don't, I've noticed. Because of what I went through, I do pay more attention. The woman I was back then is not the woman I am today, thank God. And so I attempted suicide and was in the psychiatric ward for about 30 days. And during that time, my psychiatrist said that I needed to move out of that area and down where my family was. So that's what I did. We packed up all of my stuff. I had, got the house in the divorce, but I ended up letting my ex-husband stay there because I did move out of town. And it was a new beginning. It was like, okay, I have a new start. I have a new chapter beginning in my life. I was excited about it, you know, and I ended up getting buying a business. It was on the ground floor of the tanning business. So it was just starting out where you had the tanning booths, and I had a nice salon spa and masseuse and masseur and all kinds of nice things going on in there with all kinds of lotions and everything you could imagine. And it was in a great location next to a big business building where there was lawyers and bankers and investors. So it was thriving. And that occurred in February. And so I was able to move into my own home with my children, and we were doing great. My family was close by, so I was with them all the time. I had a sister that I did allow her to stay with me. She was a blessing. You know, she was a younger sister that we all got along great, close family.
EveryLife.com is America's pro-life baby diaper and wipes company. I love EveryLife.com, and I use EveryLife diapers and wipes for my little ones because these are a best-in-class product that are clean. There's no harmful dyes or fragrances or phthalates in this product. It is designed to be healthy for your little one and good for your little one's skin. If you go to EveryLife.com/join today, by joining the Changing Lives Club, you not only get 10% off your monthly diaper and wipe subscription. In addition to that, you'll get a free tote bag, and EveryLife.com will donate a box of diapers and wipes to a mother and baby in need. And I'm excited to share, EveryLife.com is now offering training pants for your little one. These are 12-hour leak-proof training pants, pull-ups for that little one that is maybe potty training. You got to check them out. EveryLife also has just come out with their new shampoo and baby wash and lotion package. The product is amazing. I have already started to use it. That's EveryLife.com/join. Use the code Lila. I want to ask just one quick question.
Sure.
I know we're going to get to the effectively the setup is what I would call it.
Yes.
Of what you experienced. But one theme I saw, especially in the first half of the book, was just a protectiveness that you have for kids.
Yes.
And that really resonated with me personally. I'll admit I'm one of 8 kids too, and I'm the oldest girl.
Oh, wow.
So that was really, but even scenes from your childhood where your dad was abusing your mom or even your siblings, and you try to protect them physically with your body, the little bodies of your siblings. Fast forward to your daughter, Angel, your son, Chip, and, your husband, ex-husband being physically abusive, and you trying to protect them and wanting to get them out of that place.
Yes.
When you were in this, you had the courage to leave, you left, you were in this space now where you're rebuilding your life. It sounds like you were channeling that new protectiveness into let's build a business. Let's build a life together.
Yes.
What was that? Was that something conscious for you that I'm going to, the pain that I experienced and the courage it took me to leave, I need to now go all in on this new life? What was driving you at that point?
Yes, it was. I wanted the children to know that life that we just left is not the life of the future. It's going to be wonderful. It's going to be loving. It's going to be peaceful. And so that's the environment that I wanted to create for them. And it was an environment that was going all in the right direction. And then in April, I ended up meeting my co-defendant through mutual friends at a restaurant. And we, became friends. I didn't know him very well until we ended up going to Kansas City together because he was a real estate broker and he had a convention to go to there. And whenever I got out of the psychiatric ward, I was supposed to be on medication, but I was very anti-medication at that time, pills and all of that. It was like the year of drugs and in that era. And so I was very anti drugs, and I did not take it, which now I look back and I probably should have. But I ended up going to Kansas City with him because I was going to reconcile with my ex-husband. How crazy is that? I still wasn't mentally where I needed to be.
Meaning you wanted to get back together with him.
Right.
You felt now a sense of stability. You had built
Yes.
a bit of a life and it felt safe, but you missed, you wanted a father for your children. You wanted a husband. Yeah.
I felt this guilt because I felt like a son should have their father. I would hold my son out in the garage and just cry. Because I felt like, I couldn't give him that father figure that he needed. And I didn't know what to do. And so I thought, okay, I feel stable now. I feel stronger and we can maybe make this work. Mm-hmm. And so my co-defendant and I went up there as friends. We stayed in a hotel. He had his room. I had my room. It was just a friendship thing at the time. And while we were there, one of my friends that lived in that area came over and we had a drink or two that night, had some drinks at the bar. And Greg was there, my co-defendant, and which will be the only time I'll mention his name because I do not want to honor him in this interview or in the book. But she started talking to me about, who that she was dating at the time and was telling me about the victim that lived in Springfield. And so I noticed that my co-defendant didn't pay any attention to the conversation until certain things were mentioned about jewelry and he wore a 3-carat diamond ring. And then I did pay attention to that in hindsight, not at the moment, that's when he entered the conversation and wanted to know more about, who are you talking about? Like it might have jogged something. Now that I look back and see, it might have jogged something that was going on that I wasn't aware of. And so we came back to Springfield, and on the way back, he wanted to know how my conversation went with my ex-husband. And I just broke down. It was very painful, very sad, because I realized it wasn't going to happen, and my son would not have that father figure that I wanted for him. And so my co-defendant was very empathetic, very kind, very warm, and wanted me to talk to him about it. I'm your friend. I want to help you with this. I want to help you get to the other side of this. And so I wasn't used to that. I wasn't used to having somebody that I could just talk to about stuff like this, and especially a male figure, because I had never dated anyone before. And so we came back and we started dating. And my friends that she was talking about, the victim, called wanting to know if I would come to Kansas City and, go up there and be with my girlfriend and him and us, go out to dinner and things.
Were they dating your friend and the victim?
Mm-hmm.
So the co-defendant, we won't say his name like you said, but that you are now dating.
Right.
He knew that your friend in Kansas City was dating this wealthy jeweler.
Correct.
And he was very interested in that.
Correct. Yes. Thank you. That was a perfect way to put it. And whenever he would, the victim would call me, wanting to go to lunch or something, just get to know me because I was his girlfriend's friend. My co-defendant would be there. He wouldn't be jealous. He wouldn't be accusatory. He wouldn't accuse me of wanting to be with this gentleman. And that was so different from what my ex-husband was. I would have already had several beatings by then. And just because he would imagine these things in his mind, not ever having any cause to do so, but that was his mindset. And my co-defendant was I could tell him about it and it would be fine. So I never thought anything was out of the norm. I thought everything was great and things were going exactly how I had pictured my life to be, to find a man that loved me, loved my children, and they got along great. He had two little boys that were about the same age as my son. He was in between the two of them in age-wise. And so I thought, wow, this is really going well. I like this. I like being able to be honest and say, oh, so-and-so called today. Here's what he said. And just to be open about it. And it just felt normal. I felt like my dream of having that beautiful home with the picket fence around it and the swimming pool and everything was going to come to fruition.
As you may know, porn addiction is on the rise for both women and men today. The porn industry is a billion-dollar industry preying off of vulnerable men and women. The good news is that there is a solution, and our show is proud to partner with CovenantEyes.com. CovenantEyes.com is not only something to block explicit material on your phone, your tablet, or your laptop, but CovenantEyes.com is also a community to give you strength to choose good things instead of to choose the destruction of porn. For over 25 years, Covenant Eyes has been helping thousands of people break free and stay free from porn addiction. Whether you're a parent protecting your kids, a husband searching for accountability, or a wife searching for accountability, or somebody who just wants to make sure that porn doesn't make it onto your screen, CovenantEyes.com has got you covered. And right now, Covenant Eyes is offering a free 30-day trial specifically for listeners of this show. So you can go to CovenantEyes.com and get a free 30-day trial using the code Lila. That's CovenantEyes.com. Use the code Lila for a free 30-day trial. Start your journey to freedom today.
And it just felt normal. I felt like my dream of having that beautiful home with the picket fence around it and the swimming pool and everything was going to come to fruition. And then the 4th of July, we went down to my aunt's house for a celebration. And she and I were in the pool, and my co-defendant was in a lounge chair reading a book. And she said, Judy, she said, why is he reading a book on manipulation? And I said, Well, he's a real estate broker. You know, he had been in the ministry, so I didn't think anything sinister was going on with him reading a book like that. I said, well, Aunt Wanda, I said, I think he's just, you know, he has to read these kinds of books because he sells $1 million properties to a lot of people, and he has to know how to get them to want to buy these properties. And she said, oh, okay. I had no idea, none. And I look back and see a red flag there, you know, and I see a red flag on him, pretending like he really cared and that he really loved my children. Not thinking that it was anything to do with anything that he was planning. But I did know, I mean, I look back now again and see where he would be talking to different people that I'd never been introduced to or didn't know anything about, and wouldn't really talk about them. He had introduced me to him a couple of times, and he wanted me to set a time up where they could talk to the victim. And then,
Judy, just a quick interruption here. How long was this time frame where he was kind of ingratiating himself in your life? He knew you were really vulnerable. You just left an abusive marriage. You're trying to build a new life as a single mom, and he's, you know, that shoulder to cry on, literally. But he's like interested because you seem to have these wealthy connections. This one in particular, he's really zeroed in on. How long was this time frame?
Okay, so I moved to that area in October. Got my business in February. Met him in April, and in June he decided to move into my house unbeknownst to me until I came home with my son from the nursery after I closed the salon down.
He just showed up.
He just showed up.
You'd known him 3 months.
Yes. And I walked in the foyer and there were suitcases sitting there. And I just verbally said, whose suitcases are these? Because I thought maybe my sister was there for a friend or something. And he come around the corner and he said, those are mine. He said, I felt like it was time I move in with you and take care of you and the kids. And I said, what? I said, I don't allow people to live in the house with me with my children. And he said, Judy, he said, I just feel like this is, you know, what's going to be best for you and for us. And we want this family. And so there I said, okay, you know, not knowing what his sinister ideas or thoughts or plans were. And so he moved in with me. And then in July, he approached me with wanting to meet this gentleman.
So 3 months later.
Right. And then the murder happened.
So for folks listening, and you share, of course, this in the book, but he asks you to go meet the victim.
Right.
Can you share what you're comfortable sharing, the events that transpired next?
He didn't tell me any details until each step occurred. And he did it in such a manner that nobody saw him. You know, they only saw me driving my Thunderbird with my turn license plates.
And just for context too, this is a car that you'd worked really hard on buying in your new business. You had started this new life, and
right.
And I want to make sure people listening to understand, like when you had left your ex-husband, you had left physical abuse. He had been beating you as your husband had, as your father had beat your mother and also beat you as a child. And this new guy that you didn't know was going to do this with you. He was very peaceful. He never laid his hand on you, at least during this short period of time.
Correct.
So for you, this felt like, this guy's great.
Yeah.
He's not hurting me.
Yeah. And we have great communication. He allows me to just be honest and say how I feel about things. So I had no idea, even my mother, even my stepfather that was a minister thought he was great. You know, this was going to be a brand new beginning for me. And, then whenever the murder occurred that night, I was shot. We didn't know if the bullet had penetrated or if it just, grazed me. but there was a lot of blood, and I could tell I was in shock. Not only from that, but just seeing what he was actually doing. And I'm sorry.
Don't be sorry, Judy. What a horrible, horrible thing to experience. I'm so sorry.
Oh, I'm so sorry. And then whenever that happened, he went to the person's house that was involved with him in this.
An accomplice.
Yes, and they had me sitting in the car. He said, we've got to find out what to do about the bullet.
And you were bleeding at this point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So your co-defendant kills this victim.
Right.
You're there. He, every step of the way, he's asking you to drive him somewhere. You're like, sure. And then he all of a sudden is murdering this poor gentleman.
Yeah.
God rest his soul. And then you get injured in the process. And then at this point, what is going through your mind? You just witnessed a murder. You're shot. You don't know what's going on. You're in this car. What is going through your mind?
It felt like I was in a movie. It wasn't real. You know, what I just saw did not happen. I was, I don't know. I knew I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't know what to do about it. I just knew that something had to happen. Something, this had to stop. It had to stop. I don't know why it happened. I didn't know why he wanted to do what he did, other than he wanted to rob the gentleman. And but that wasn't the end of the story, because we ended up, after we left this gentleman's house and told him what had happened, and my co-defendant wanted him to help him move the body, and he said he wasn't going to. And he advised my co-defendant to take me to St. Louis, to where there was a doctor that would not report such gunshot wounds. So we did go, but we did not know that his co-conspirator, I guess you would call him, he sent a hitman to kill us because we knew too much about what had happened, that he was involved also in it. And that's whenever the gentleman came to our room and put a silencer on the table and said he was there to kill us. And again, it was like, this isn't happening. This isn't my life. This isn't me. This isn't anything I've ever seen except on the screen. And he saw me look at the window and I was thinking, I've got to get out of here. I don't know how to get out of here, but I've got to get out of here. And my co-defendant said, if you kill us, he's just going to send somebody to kill you because you know too much. And that's whenever the co-defendant, he looked at me one time, not the co-defendant, but the gentleman that was sent to kill us, the hitman. He looked at me and he said, are you Tessie Hines' daughter? And I said, yes. And he said, today I'm not going to kill you. He said, because your mom has a picture of you in her store. And he said, years ago when me and my family came to Springfield, we were homeless. And she brought us food and clothing. And for that reason, I'm not going to kill you today.
Wow.
Yeah. So little did I know that what my mom had done. And she wore a dress and heels and loved people, always helped people. I thought of her as Mother Teresa. She didn't care where they were at, under a bridge or on the railroad tracks. She would go by herself in her fancy Cadillac and go and help them. But little did I know that her kindness and her love for helping others would save my life. Only God had that plan. Only God. And So we ended up, my co-defendant said, we've got to go to Kansas. We've got to go to Alaska, he said, because he's just going to send other people. And they tried to, him and the hitman talked about going back and killing him. And I said, this has to stop. This can't continue. It's got to stop.
Were you afraid that your co-defendant who had murdered the victim, that he would turn the gun on you?
Yes.
What was going through your mind? Because at this point, he's dragging you everywhere. You're going to this hospital. Now you're going to go to Alaska. You're thinking, how do I get out of here? But you're not, you're with him. So what was that dynamic like for you?
It was very scary because in my heart, I knew it. Whenever he said, because you knew too much, that's why I was sent to kill you. I thought, this isn't going to stop. It's not going to stop. It's going to keep going. And I'm going to die. My children are not going to have their mother. I'm never going to see them again.
So you thought you were just on this wild goose chase to escape people who were trying to kill you that would eventually take your life. You kind of thought you were on it was like a doomsday mission for you.
There was no end. There was no end to it. And so he said, we've got to go to Alaska. But before we do, I want to talk to an attorney. And so we did talk to an attorney who ended up representing both of us at our trial. But before we left for Alaska, and this attorney knew, he suggested that we do go to Alaska. I told my co-defendant, I said, I have to talk to my mother. I cannot leave without talking to my mother. And he said, okay. He said, but you're not going to be alone with her. I will let you call her. I will be there when you call her, and they can meet us. And so they did. They met us at a truck stop. And I thought, this is the only opportunity I'm going to have to see my mom and talk to her. So I took the chance and I said, hey, Mom, because they got in the car with us. And I said, I need to go to the restroom. Will you go with me? Because I thought, I'm going to die anyways. I've got to let my mom know, and I've got to let her know what to do with the kids. And there was just all these things going through my head, but I knew in my heart I wouldn't be back. And so we went to the restroom, and I told her every detail of the crime. And she was just sobbing. And I said, Mom, I need a pen and paper. I need to write a note to the kids. I'm sorry. And so she gave me a pen and paper, and I wrote a note to them. And I said, please let my siblings know I love them. Please take care of my children. And I said, I won't see you again. And so we walked out after I gained my composure and got in the car, and they left. My mom was... Even in then, she was so supportive, and she didn't know what to do either.
Did she say, well, I'll just call the cops and we'll rescue you? I mean, what was going through her mind, if you can share?
Because she knew that if there was these hitmen and people involved, we had to think of the safety of the kids, of my children, and not allow that to happen. She could not, I didn't want her to be involved in anything like that. But I wanted her to know, if I don't come back, here's why. And if it gets to that point, then you have to do what you have to do.
Did you fear that you'd run into some sort of a mafia group?
I did.
Of some kind?
I did. And it's so strange that you say that, because John Ashcroft was the Attorney General of Missouri at the time, and he ended up being the United States Attorney General. I believe it was for President Bush. And they were doing a crime task force, mafia task force in Springfield at the time. And I had a friend that was very involved in keeping up on what was going with that task force. And all the names involved were names that was affiliated with some of the victims in this and those associated with this situation, which I've never gotten into that. And that wasn't part of my life. So I felt no need to mention any of that in the book. We do know that there was more people involved in all of this than what I had even thought about or anticipated in until she became part of my team to bring me home. And she was able to bring all of that to the governor's attention and in my clemency briefs. So we felt like this was probably some kind of crime ring.
That you had fallen into.
Right.
So you end up in Alaska. You end up taken into custody with your co-defendant.
Right.
You have the same lawyer that the co-defendant had selected that was representing both of you. Tell us about how you ended up receiving a life in prison sentence.
Well, because we had the same co-defendant representing both of us, they could not...
The same lawyer.
Right, the same lawyer, I'm sorry. Defending both of us, he could not adequately represent one without hurting the other one. So I went to trial first. He said that in order for me to have a defense, that I would have to come up with an alibi as to where I was at, that I was not at the scene, that I was shopping with my mother or something of that sort. And I said, I refuse to do that. I'm not going to put my hand on a Bible, on God's word, and lie. And I said, not only that, I am not going to get my mother involved. And I made my mother promise me, whenever I came back, do not ever say anything about you knowing anything about this. Not even to save me, Mom, you can't do that. You can't do that. I cannot bear the thought of them dragging you through this. And bless her heart, she abided by what I asked. I said, the kids need you. They need you out here because I don't know how this is going to go. And so I would not allow her to take the stand. He didn't even know that no one knew until I did this book that my mother knew anything. And bless her heart, she's no longer here, so no harm can ever come to her.
Meaning, and what you're saying there for folks listening is that she could have testified on your behalf.
Yeah.
Because you told her in that bathroom what happened right after it had happened. And you told her the truth of what had happened. And there was nobody there that would have been a key witness in your trial if she had been there and been able to say, she was just dragged into this whole thing. She's innocent.
But that would have put her in danger. It would have put my whole family in danger, even my children. And I needed to protect them, just like I'd always done. And I just felt like, and my mom told me later, she said, Judy, I'm sorry this happened to you. She said, out of all the kids, none of them could have endured what you've had to endure. And she said, God is going to get you out of this. He's going to help you be free. You just have to trust him. And she was right. She was right.
So the co-defendant, this attorney that's representing you both, did they say take a guilty plea to get less time? And what was the spin? Because in your view, this is something I was a witness to. You were a witness to the crime.
Right.
And you could say a second victim of the crime since you were shot as well.
Correct.
But you did not commit this crime. So how did the trial occur with ending with a guilty verdict? Were you ever able to take the stand and plead your innocence? What happened?
No, I was not able to take the stand because I refused to come up with an alibi witness or testimony. So he said, therefore, you cannot take the stand.
Because taking the stand would have implicated your co-defendant.
Exactly.
And you had the same attorney. And so that would have basically proven his guilt for you to be a witness against him.
Correct.
So you just had to be silent.
Yeah, I had to be silent, and I had to just put it in the hands of the ones that were, that wanted me to go to prison.
Did the co-defendant take the stand against you?
No, he did not.
That was the deal with the attorney. We're not going to testify about this. And so hopefully we'll both get off free.
Yeah, can take the stand against each other. And which I didn't know at the time because I didn't know anything about the law, that was a serious constitutional issue and against my rights. And so today, what happened then with one attorney representing two co-defendants cannot happen today in the state of Missouri. And we even appealed it all the way up to the federal courts. And the 3-judge panel even asked the Attorney General's office that was, representing the state, do you feel like there was some sandbagging going on in her case? And he said, yes, I do. Yet, because it would have cost the state too much money to overturn my case, it would have affected so many other cases that had dual representation. They did not overturn my case.
Because they'd have to retry them all.
Right.
So was your co-defendant also sentenced to life in prison?
No.
No.
During the representation of my attorney that also represented him, unbeknownst to me, behind our back, he was seeing 2 other criminal attorneys. And once I was convicted, he fired that attorney and hired the other 2 to represent him.
And then he blamed you for the crime.
Correct. Yes, he sure did. And he went as far as, once I went to prison, put out a contract on me to ensure that I would not go back and testify against him.
What do you mean he put out a contract on you?
There was a career criminal female that was in the county jail with us. And whenever I went to prison, she came after I did. And so she was in the county jail with him, and they became writing partners, wrote each other and talked to each other through the windows. And he ended up getting her to take a contract to kill me. And so when she came to prison, she befriended me because I knew her. I thought, oh, good, I know somebody, because I was thrown into a world that I knew absolutely nothing about. And so I thought, well, at least I know somebody that's been through the system. She can help me. She can protect me. She can show me the ropes in here. But I found out from another offender that she had a contract. And so I had to do what I had to do to take care of that. And I ended up having my first fight in prison. Because
with her?
With her, because she was known for carrying a shank.
Did she have a shank when you fought with her? She did. There to kill you, and you fought her off. And because if I didn't do something, it would be on her terms. And we lived on an open dorm. We had 4-foot cubicle walls. So it could happen anytime, any moment, anywhere, in the bathroom, when I was in the shower. It didn't matter. It could have happened anytime. And I was going home. I was going to fight this. I got the courage. Anger can really motivate somebody. And I realized that you can do 2 things with anger, Lila. That's either you can get bitter or you can get better. And whenever this happened to me, I was intensely angry. Judy, I have to go back to when you heard from the jury that they found you guilty of murder. Mm-hmm. I think capital murder. Yeah. And they're going to lock you out. You find you're going to be locked up for life. Were you shocked when you heard that verdict?
Yes, because I thought there's no way they could find me guilty of murder. There was no murder weapon. I had no there wasn't fingerprints anywhere. There was no way that they could do that. I really believed in our system. And when the jury came back guilty of capital murder, my mother wailed, and I was heartbroken. But I had to stand there very stoic and strong and just look at her and say, Mom, it's going to be okay. It's okay. I got this. And on the inside, I was dying. I thought, there go my children.
How old were your kids at this point?
13 and 3. Yeah.
How long had it been that you hadn't seen your 3-year-old at this point?
A year.
You hadn't seen him for a whole year. That must have killed you.
It did. It did. Yes. And now I knew that I was going to go to prison. And I didn't know, though, what my sentence would be, because that capital murder carried a sentence of either life without parole for 50 years or the death penalty. And if I had received the death penalty, Lila, I would have been executed. No, it was a gas chamber then. I would have been put in the gas chamber after 18 to 20 years. And it took me 36 years to prove that I was innocent. So I would have never had that chance to prove I was innocent. And my children, I would have died with them thinking that I was guilty of this. Yeah. So,
it's devastating.
Yeah, it was. It was. But my family, they stood beside me every day, every step of the way.
They knew you were innocent.
Yes.
They believed in you.
Yes. Yes, they did. And, but not only did he put a contract out on me, because after that happened and I did what I had to do, then, and he realized that did not work. It's not going to work because I was somebody different now, and it didn't take me long to get there. But he and his attorneys ended up convincing 4 other offenders to say and go back and testify on his behalf that I told them that I set it up, I shot and killed the victim, and he had nothing to do with it.
So they bribed other people in prison to come and testify against you.
Yes, testify for him if I took the stand. So it would dispute everything I said. That would have been 4 against 1.
Did you ever testify?
I could not, even though the prosecutor was willing to let me testify. When he found out that, because you always have to give the other side a list of your witnesses. And these names were on there. And they, of course, when they did depositions, they found out what they were going to say. And so he would not allow me to testify because it wouldn't have done any good. It would have been 4 against 1. But I did not even know that this happened. The prosecutor didn't tell me. The only thing he would tell me, tell my family, was that we can't use her. And I had no idea until 2 of these offenders came back through the prison system because they were career criminals, and they were in orientation. That's receiving an orientation where you first come into the prison. And they said, one of them said, I want protective custody. And they wanted to know why. And so the lieutenant came and talked to me. He said, Judy, I've got something to tell you that I think is really going to help your case. And so he told me that she said that she was bribed and paid commissary. She was taken care of while she was in prison for going back and testifying for my co-defendant.
And when you say bribed and paid commissary, do you mean they were just paying her bill basically for the vending machine and the toiletries?
Exactly.
That's all it took for her to testify against you.
That's all it took. And some of these offenders, that's all they have because the state pays you $8.50 a month. So to receive $350 a month for canteen and commissary, that's the limit you could spend. That was a lot to them, but it cost me more years of my life.
Do you think that there are fail-safes today against this level of corruption that existed in the system when you were tried wrongly, when you were wrongfully convicted?
There is some correction to that as far as the attorney representing, 2 defendants in the same case. So the conflict of interest, I think, has been resolved. However, all the other corruption that occurs in prisons, I don't think has been corrected. And and I know you have read the book, and you know why I was sent to Arizona for 4 years for an officer sexually abusing offenders. And I would not play that game, and I ended up getting him fired. So they sent me out of state to
retaliated against you because you put off the advances of an officer.
Correct. Yes. And even after I came home from prison, I had to testify in a deposition for the attorney, well, not for the Attorney General's office, for female offenders that had been sexually abused by psychologists and psychiatrists in the prison, and another female officer on several women. And I let them know in my deposition to the Attorney General's office, you want to resolve this issue? I said, it's been going on since I first came to prison. And I said, I'm willing to stand up and report it to whoever I need to talk to about it. I said, you need to be helping these women, not prosecuting them and not giving them the compensation that they need for what happened to them while they were under the state's care. So I said, you really did pick the wrong one to want to take a deposition from.
How do we stop corruption like that, including things like sexual abuse in prisons?
We have to start standing up. We have to start speaking out. And this case that went before the federal judges, they ended up, the Attorney General's office chose not to take it to trial. They said, no, let's settle. We don't want all of this publicity. We don't want all of this being known about our system.
Are any of those psychologists or psychiatrists or prison guards still active to your knowledge?
They let them go. They let them go with compensation. Yes.
Crazy. What about the death penalty? You mentioned it earlier. Do you think the death penalty is moral?
I do not. A life is a life. I think there's other ways of punishment other than the death penalty. How do you justify murder regardless of what umbrella you choose to put it under?
Are you also concerned about innocent people being given the death penalty, like yourself? You were in danger of that.
Absolutely. Yes, I wouldn't be sitting here with you today, Lila, if I had received the death penalty. And even the judge in his instructions to the jury wrote in there that in the instructions, she was a relatively minor participant, meaning I was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. I did not play a part in the crime, but I was present. And he wanted them to take that in consideration, but they did not. And they have that right not to. They're the jury. And then my prosecutor ended up being one of my biggest advocates to help me come home.
Wow.
Yeah.
Over 35 years in jail. Meanwhile, when you entered jail, you were 32. You had a 3-year-old and a 11-year-old.
13.
A 13. You had a 3-year-old and a 13-year-old. How did incarceration affect your relationship with your kids?
Well, I'll tell you what, you learn if you really want to be a mother and you really love your children, you learn how to mother behind bars. And some mothers are able to navigate that journey, but so many are not. And they've not had good role models. It's a generational curse on families, with career criminals that keep going through generation back and forth to prison. So these children are raised not knowing how to be citizens, how to be adults, how to live a normal, healthy, law-abiding life. So those are things that needed to be changed in the prison system. We had to start looking at generations of criminals. And so I was able to be on the ground floor of pioneering 4-H life. And that was where we allowed the families to be a part of this organization. And we would have visits with not just the mom and the child, which we did start that program early on in my incarceration for mothers and their children. But we
helped start that program.
Yes.
Beautiful.
Yes. Called Patch, Parents and Their Children. And that was one-on-one visits with the child in a home-like setting in a trailer. but you first had to take parenting classes. We had to teach them how to be parents, how to learn their children's love language, how to communicate from long distance, and that's not easy to do. And we did that through them being able to cook foods, to cook meals with them, play games with them, wrestle in the floor with them, watch movies with them without a prison setting being in the background. So it was more of a home-like style in a trailer without uniforms around. But we saw that this had to extend farther than just the mom and the child, because those children were still going back out to their other relatives. And so we started including 4-H Life. It was a federal grant program that was started through one of the universities that came into the prisons. And so I became very actively involved in that. And that's where the aunts, uncles, cousins, grandparents could all come in on visits. And let's all talk about this. Let's all do crafts together. Let's all do fun stuff together. Let's all pray together. Let's all have a meal together, sit down like a family. And that was very, very rewarding. It was very beneficial. And it helped a lot of families whenever we had that program. So it was a joy to watch them heal and break that curse in their families.
What was it like to see Angel and Chip the first time since being incarcerated?
It was like they were reborn again. I felt that joy of seeing my children, holding them close and loving on them. And
were they able to embrace you? How were they doing?
In the beginning, yes, they were. But then it got to where you could only have a hug coming in and a hug going out. And so we had to transition into that, and that was difficult.
Why is that policy?
Because they thought that it was a way to pass drugs. A lot of mothers would use their children to what they call mules. They'd be mules to bring drugs into the prison to them. And so they could sell it and use it inside the prison. So I always say that every rule we had was created by an offender. Mm. And that's what I used to tell the offenders. You don't like the rule, quit doing things to make the rule. Mm. Because you're just making the incarceration harder for everybody. I said, the citizen you were on the street, or that you want to be, is a citizen you need to be inside the prison system. And that's what I tried to be. And
how often would you get to see your kids during those years?
My family was very, very good at bringing the children to visit me and always making sure I had visits. I know when I first became incarcerated, we had a Christmas visit, and I could invite other offenders that didn't have family. And so I invited, I think it was 3 offenders, and I had 25 relatives there for Christmas dinner with a turkey, ham, all the fixings. And it was it was such a joy. It was just like, wow. You know, my family was so supportive and loved to help other offenders, loved to send them things from home. And my family fought to help me help other offenders that they kept in the hole all the time. So it was no wonder they wanted to send me to Arizona for 4 years, because I was making a lot of waves.
And that would be away from your family to be in Arizona.
Yes. And that's what they said. We're going to send you so far away that your family will not be able to visit you. And that's where they sent all incorrigibles from all the states to that one prison. So whenever I was shipped there, I thought, oh my gosh, you know, these are really the baddest of the bad. So here I am again.
You spent time in solitary confinement too.
Yes.
What was the events there, and what was that like?
Solitary confinement is a concrete slab that you sleep on. You have a stool, you have a sink, you have no mirror, of course, but any mirrors in any cell was not a mirror. It was made of some other material that reflected you, but not a mirror. chuck hole, they call it, which is a door in the hole that they slide your food through, and there's no windows. There is a window, but it's way up on close to the ceiling, so you can't see out it, and nobody can see in.
And do you talk to anybody?
No. The only one you have the option to talk to is an officer when they bring your meals. That was all.
Did you get to read any materials?
No.
Or
No.
nothing?
So I worked out.
That's it. You were by yourself.
By myself. Yes. Yes.
You eventually were freed.
Yes.
I mean, 35 years, it's a lifetime for some.
It is.
I want to hear how you were freed.
Okay.
And in those 35 years, did you ever at any point give up hope?
Lila, I know this sounds crazy. It sounded crazy to a lot of people while I was there. But no, I went in with hope. I went in knowing I would fight to come home. Because, not only because I was so angry, but because of the deep love I had for my family and my children, and the deep love they had for me. And I had to prove to them and anyone else that had knew about this crime that I was innocent, even news reporters. The day I was released, the town where I was convicted in, it was like a jubilee, they said. That I spoke to these news reporters later on after I got out. They had seen me in the Capitol speaking to other legislators. They would come in, one particular one, and she was a big reporter on the news in Springfield. And she said, Judy, is that you, Judy Henderson? And I turned around. I said, yeah. I said, who are you? And she said, you don't remember me, but myself and another female reporter came to the prison to talk with you, and you're so gracious and kind, and let us talk to you. And we walked away crying because we knew you did not do this.
Wow.
And we are so happy. The news station, everybody in Springfield is so happy that you're home. And she ended up, she was a probate judge at that point. And she ended up helping me later, a couple of years later, with one of my sisters that ended up with schizophrenia. Mm. And we had to get guardianship of her since I've been home, which was sad because she was such a joy all during my incarceration. Mm-hmm.
How did you finally win your freedom, Judy?
Well, I never gave up. I started, first I had to understand what got me there. I had to get serious with my therapy, understanding I didn't know anything about a battered women's syndrome. I didn't even know the term. And I went to a workshop that volunteers came in and taught. And I learned about it, and I thought, oh my gosh, this sounds like me. I am that person. And so I really got serious about my therapy. But it's so strange, Lila, because I didn't get serious about it until I went to Arizona. And Arizona is such a wealthy state. They had the money and the funds to have the therapy, to have the psychologist and the psychiatrist there to help offenders. So I was blessed to be able to get some good therapy, and adults molested as children. I took that therapy, and that started helping me heal. And then I worked to help pass legislation for battered women. And I thought, I've got to learn the statutes. I've got to learn the laws that put me here. I've got to learn about politics.
And this was all in prison.
Yes.
You're doing this.
Oh, yes. Wow. Yes. I finally got to the point where, like I was saying earlier, there's two things you can do with anger: get bitter or get better. You combine that with a deep, sincere, heartfelt love that you have for your children and your family. And you know what I'm talking about because you're a mother. Mm. And that's a powerful combination right there to put together. And I felt like I was growing into this gorilla, like I was becoming King Kong, and I was going to get this done. I didn't know how it was going to happen. That I learned how to put clemencies together, which most lawyers are never taught how to do a clemency. And so since then, I've done roundtables with law students schooling them and teaching them how to do clemencies that are
Wow.
powerful to governors. So I thought, I've got to get a team together. I've got to put a team together. So I got with the law professors of different law schools, and we started doing a coalition for women.
This was while you were
organization
in prison.
While I was in prison.
So were you emailing them? How were you getting in touch with all of these people?
I would write them letters, not email.
Wow.
We didn't have technology. We had walls or phones on the wall.
So you would write handwritten letters.
Yes.
Telling them
handwritten
about your
letters.
situation.
Yes.
Wow.
Mhm. Yeah. And I went through 6 governors and I was denied. But each time I made my clemency better and better and better and realized you have to be very transparent with your life. Even if you got a traffic ticket, they had to know it. You needed to let them know that you were being very honest and real and tell them all the details about your life, whether you liked it or not, whether it was painful or not. They needed to know. They needed to see a picture of what your life was.
Did you write these by yourself, Judy?
I did.
Did you have an attorney at the time who was advising you?
I had an attorney that was pro bono that started being my attorney in, it was 2 years after I was there, Robert Ramsey. And he was a paid attorney that was there to see somebody else. And I asked to speak with him. I told her, I said, please let him know I want to talk to him. So I did. And he became my pro bono attorney, didn't charge me a penny, but believed in my case.
Wow.
And he was there the day I walked out, him and his wife.
How many other people do you think there are right now in prison that were wrongly convicted?
Oh my gosh. I think there's more than what we could probably count on 2 hands. And that's very sad because it's destroying families.
You mean in just any one given prison or in the entire prison
in one
system?
prison. Just
So
in one prison.
every prison, you're saying there's at least 10
yeah.
people there that are wrongly
yeah.
convicted.
Oh yeah. If not more. Yes. Because it's not about whether you're guilty or innocent. It's about, let's get rid of this case. We got to get this case out of our files. You know, our stack is getting too big and it's costing the state too much money. So let's just get them convicted, get them sent in prison.
Wow.
If they're innocent, they'll figure it out somewhere down the road. And if not, oh well.
What was the first day of freedom like when you got clemency finally and you were freed?
Oh my. Well, for one, I didn't know. I was teaching. I became a fitness trainer also, a personal and group trainer licensed, so I could come to the street and do it out here professionally. And I became a dog trainer, so I could be a dog trainer. I became a hairdresser. And so I was teaching classes and they told me I had to go to the visiting room because my attorney came. I said no. I was arguing with them. She wouldn't come without letting me know so I could have my makeup on. I could do my hair. Because that was one thing that the prison system did not take from me, was trying to keep myself up. And they could take my name, they could give me a number, but they couldn't take certain things from me that I didn't allow. And so they finally threatened me with the hole if I didn't go up there. So I said, oh, well, I think I'm going to have a change of heart. I'm going, So I'm just going to prove to you that it's not me that you need up there. It's another Henderson because we had another one there. So they said whenever they said my attorney was there and I still had to wait an hour and a half, that didn't make any sense to me. And then I thought, oh, this isn't good news. Nothing good is going to become of this because this has never happened before. And so about an hour and a half, they got a call in the back and said, go ahead and strip search her. The attorney has arrived, and so go ahead and send her in. And I was trying to think of every way I could manipulate getting in that visiting room because the water fountain was there. I need a drink. Let me go have a drink just so I could see what was going on. And they didn't fall for it. So I just had to wait and be patient. And whenever I walked in, the attorney for the governor had been to see me about 3 weeks earlier with one of my female attorneys from the coalition that we created. She was a law student, and then she took me into her own firm after she graduated. She said, this girl's innocent, and I'm keeping her. I'm going to take her into the firm that I'm buying, I created, and I'm going to bring her home. And she did, along with several other team members. And so I walked in, and he was there, the governor's attorney, because whenever he saw me 3 weeks ago, he just said, I have some questions I want to ask you. The governor wants me to ask them. But he said, this doesn't mean anything. This is his first year of his term.
They didn't want to get your hopes up.
Right. Yeah. He said, so we're not saying that we're going to do anything. And I said, okay, I understand. And my attorney was there. She was there with me. But then whenever they told me to go up there this time, I was just thinking, okay, it's bad news. I don't know if it's something with my family. It really is my attorney. And then when I walked in and saw him standing there, Justin Smith was his name. And we're like family to this day. I said, Justin, what are you doing here? And then I knew that it wasn't good. I just figured he was there to tell me, I'm sorry, but the governor isn't going to be able to help you. And he said, well, there's one other thing I wanted to ask you. And I said, what? He said, actually, there's somebody that's been waiting to see you for a long time. And, or not waiting to see you for a long time. There's somebody that's here that would like to speak with you. And he said, turn around. And whenever I did, it was the governor. I said, oh my God. Oh my God. And I just started bawling. And I went to my knees. And the governor, he touched me on the shoulder and he said, Judy, he said, it's good. He said, it's good news. I said, what? He said, come over here and sit with me. So he helped me up and we sat down at the table. And he had some papers underneath the table on a shelf. And he pulled it out and he said, for one, I want to tell you on behalf of the state of Missouri, I'm sorry for all the years you've had to be in prison for something you didn't do. And he said, so on this day, I commute your sentence to life. To life served. Time served. And you're released today. Wow. I said, what did you say? He said, you're going home today. I said, can you say that again? Because I didn't believe, he had to tell me like 3 or 4 times. I said, are you serious? And he said, yes, you're going home today. And he said, I'm going to get out of the way because there's people here that's been waiting forever to see this day. And he and his staff left and walked my daughter, my son, and the rest of my family and my 2 attorneys. And so that was a day I'll always remember. And my sister was there that had promised me 20 years before that, whenever I come home, she said, I'm going to have you a long black limo waiting on you. I said, what? And sure enough, they let me go back down to the yard to pack my property. And whenever I did, there was 1,600 women on that yard that was just screaming and yelling and just so joyful. Everybody was so, so happy. And they knew that I was going home. They had already known. The staff was on every monitor all through the prison, knew something was going on, but they were supposed to keep it a secret, but they didn't do a very good job. So they let me pack my stuff. I went to medical because you have to get a medical release. I walked out the door, and the last person I touched offender-wise was the girl that took the contract out on me. And I looked at her, and she looked at me because she came back, rare criminal. She came back and gave me a high five. And she said, Judy, what are you doing? I said, I'm going home, Pam. She said, what? I said, I'm going home.
Did you forgive her?
Yes, I did. I did forgive her. I forgave my prosecutor. I wrote him a letter to let him know I forgave him, that I felt like he was just doing a job that he was elected to do, and he did it very well, evidently. But I said, I do want you to know. And I did that when I had done about 20 some years, I think, at Christmas. I sent him a Christmas card and told him I forgave him. And I said, here's what I've been doing. Here's what my family's been doing. Here's how my family's grown with, my grandchildren. And I did that every year. I'd send him an update. And then he became one of my biggest advocates. It was just something God laid on my heart to do.
Wow.
And, but God led me through this whole incarceration, Lila. Whenever I first came to prison, I was angry at God. And we had a very heart-to-heart conversation because I could not understand how he could allow something like this to happen. And then I was chosen as one of 12 candidates to go to a Residence Encounter Christ 3-day retreat put on by Catholics. And I did not want to go because I was not in a good place, not in a good place with the man upstairs. But once I was there, it was almost like I'd walked into like heaven. I mean, it was so peaceful, so calm. And there were these people that really, really loved us, that came in and gave of their free time and spent tons of money on food that I hadn't seen since I'd been in prison, and showed us such love. And then they washed our feet. When they did that, I mean, I felt the power of God so strong in my life. And I thought, you didn't desert me. I deserted you. And then from that moment on, my faith started building and building. And I was able to see God in so much that he was doing, the work that he was doing, and why I was there. I was able to find my purpose, which I feel so fortunate in doing, because after being there and being out here, there's so many people that don't know what their purpose is in life. Just like you. Mm-hmm. I mean, you found your purpose. Look at all the hard work you've done for so many, how many lives you've touched. And you are another one that was blessed by your journey. And I think God creates these journeys for us, but we choose how we want to walk it. And we either pay attention to the red signs that say, no, don't do that. Or we don't. And that's our choice, not his choice. He gave us the choice to do what we want to do in our lives. So blaming God, it's not God. It's us that made the choices to be where we were, with the people we were with, doing something that shouldn't have happened. So I have to take responsibility for where I was at, even though wasn't my choice for the outcome to be what it was. It was my choice to be at that place at that moment, at that time. And I just thank God every day, and I love him beyond any man that I could ever be with. He's given me fulfillment. He's given me the love that I searched for. And he loves me like I wanted to be loved. And he gave me so many gifts and blessings during this incarceration, and my purpose in helping others. And that is where I found my joy. And my children are great. They're the greatest. I'm so proud of them for allowing me to be their mom and loving me anyways. And Angel just told me the other day, she said, Mom, I always felt close to you. We always had such a great bond. And we were always she was very transparent with me, which sometimes hurt, because of some of the things she'd tell me. And I'm thinking, no, 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 no. But I was able to mother her through some tough relationships she was in. And she said, one reason, Mom, that I was so comfortable with you is because, for one, I knew you couldn't ground me. I said, oh, okay, Angel. And I thought, well, if that's what it took, I'm glad that it turned out the way it did, because you never know what kind of relationship we would have had, for real. And now it's just such a blessing. She's grown up to be such an incredible woman, and I love my children, my 9 grandchildren, 9 great-grandchildren, and it's all about family and God. And I still work to this day to try to help others and to help those incarcerated, and will probably die doing so. It's my mission.
Judy, you're incredible. I am so honored that you came, and I hope everyone reads When the Light Finds Us. It's available, I think, most places you can get books, certainly on Amazon. We'll include the link. Thank you for sharing your story with the show and with our audience. And thank you for inspiring me. You are incredible.
Oh, well, thank you, Lila. I'll tell you, it was a tough journey, but it was a great journey. And would I want to do it again? Of course not. But the end is just been a miracle. God is in the miracle working business. He put everybody in my life that was supposed to be there at just the right times. And he's still doing it, with helping me with the book and introducing me to you. This is a divine intervention.
Amen.
Yes. And I love the work that you do. And thank you.
Thank you, Judy. Thanks so much for listening to this episode with Judy Henderson. She's incredible. Please share this episode with your friends, family, and loved ones. And don't forget to subscribe if you're not already subscribed. We'll see you guys next time. And a huge thank you to EWTN, Eternal Word Television Network, which is the largest religious broadcaster in the world. You can get access to Lila Rose Show episodes 24 hours in advance at EWTN.com/on-demand. And a big thank you to EWTN and their incredible mission to bring souls to Jesus.